The one big beautiful bill, that's this massive reconciliation bill currently being debated in Congress. It's currently working its way through Congress right now, and it's currently being considered in the Senate. And the latest news on this, with respect to federal employees at least, is that the Senate Parliamentarian has struck a number of provisions out of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act on the basis that they violate something called the Byrd Rule. And some of these provisions that have been struck um, are among the proposed pay and benefits cuts to the federal workforce. So that's the key part for you all, for federal employees. And this was reported by the Senate Budget Committee recently in the last few days. And again, all of this is taking place just in the Senate, where the bill is currently being debated. Because again, remember, it has already passed in the House. And here is a list of the provisions that were impacted when they were struck by the Senate Parliamentarian for being found to be in violation of the Byrd Rule. The at-will employment option. This is the proposal in the Senate that would increase the FERS contribution rate for newly hired federal employees by 10%. That's 10 full percentage points for newly hired federal employees if they choose to keep civil service protections. And the rate of increase would only be 5% if they chose to become at-will employees. Now, if you become an at-will employee, again, you lose your civil service protections, meaning you can be fired pretty much for any reason at any time. The next provision is the MSPB filing fee. This proposal would impose a $350 fee for federal employees to file claims or appeals with the Merit Systems Protection Board, and it would be refundable for successful claims. The next provision is the bonuses for cost cutters. This was the name of legislation that was proposed by Senator Rand Paul in the past, a Republican from Kentucky. He also happens to be the chairman of the Senate committee that made these proposals. And it basically would have codified that legislation into law vis-a-vis the spending bill, the reconciliation bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill. And what it would do is it would pay bonuses to federal employees who report wasteful spending, typically that you see happen around the end of a fiscal year when federal agencies spend more money. That's so that they can keep that same amount of money in their budget next year, because it's the use it or lose it mentality, as it's known. The next provision that would again be struck, or was struck by the Senate parliamentarian, is charging federal employee unions for the use of federal resources. This effectively bans the use of official time and federal resources by the unions, because the unions would have to reimburse the government for the cost of these. And the final one is the disposal of Postal Service electric vehicles. This legislative provision would have rescinded $1 billion earmarked by the Biden administration under the Inflation Reduction Act for the Postal Service to purchase electric vehicles and install related infrastructure. And it also mandated selling any unused vehicles and infrastructure. So what is the Byrd Rule? Well, here's kind of a quick summary of it. It's named after the late Senator Robert Byrd, a Democrat from West Virginia, and it's designed to keep reconciliation bills focused strictly on fiscal matters. So for instance, taxes, spending, or the debt limit. And there are 6 tests used to see if a provision violates the Byrd Rule. And this is according to the Economic Policy Innovation Center. If a provision is subject to removal, if it does not affect outlays, revenues, or terms of payment, increases the budget deficit beyond the budget window, typically 10 years, falls outside the jurisdiction of the committee that submitted it, has only an incidental budgetary impact compared to its policy goals, proposes changes to Social Security, or increases or decreases outlay or revenue when the committee doesn't follow its instructions. So what does this mean for these legislative proposals that were struck that impact federal employees? Well, if the Senate parliamentarian strikes a legislative proposal, it is quite difficult to override it. According to the Daily Signal, 60 senators have to vote to overrule the Senate parliamentarian's action in striking a proposal. However, there are only 53 Republicans in the Senate, so they don't have the votes as a practical matter. Secondly, a provision could be amended and resubmitted so that the parliamentarian would then agree with it. Also, the vice president could ignore the parliamentarian's rulings as presiding officer of the Senate, or the parliamentarian could be removed. Now, those last two items, according to the Daily Signal, are, quote, extremely unlikely, but they are in the Republicans' toolbox if they consider McDonough's, that's the Senate parliamentarian, rulings do considerable damage to the main legislative vehicle for enacting Trump's agenda. So the bottom line on all this is a significant blow to these specific legislative proposals, but they are not completely off the table yet. We've seen throughout this process, going all the way back to when the House originally proposed some of these cuts, when this was back in April when this bill was first being assembled. I said at the time, don't panic. There's a long way to go in this process. A lot of these items are likely to be changed or removed altogether. We're seeing that happen now. So while these proposals are not off the table yet, again, this is a significant setback. We'll continue to provide you with updates as they become available, so be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also visit the fedsmith.com website where we post news articles there with more updates and information. Have a good day, everyone.